Each time we add an app to a SharePoint site, there is a corresponding web part that's created for it. A web part presents information for that app. And a web part based on content from one of the apps on the site is more specifically called an app part. All app parts are web parts, but not all web parts are app parts. So for example, when we are looking at the resource library, we are seeing a web part that has a toolbar at the top for new and upload, and at the bottom has a place to drag files to upload. But this is a web part. When I created this library, I automatically got this app part because the assumption is that I won't simply want to add documents. I want to be able to see that I have these documents somewhere on some page in the site. And the way that we display information for users is using web parts. That's true with almost every app that we use in SharePoint, because SharePoint is used to create websites of pages to present information. Often when we're talking about pages in SharePoint, we'll note that we have this web part displaying a list or library. Then the further explanation is, but the real data here is actually kept in the app. That's not true either. There's no data stored in the resource library app. That's just a specification for data. All of the data in SharePoint is stored in SQL Server. So data doesn't live in the app. That's a definition of what can be stored in that list or library. And data doesn't live in the web part or app part, which is a specification for displaying the information that's stored in that list or library in SQL Server. But each web part is a presentation of that information. Let's go back to our home page on our site. You'll remember we have a documents library, and this is a web part to show information from the documents library. But it's not the only web part that we can use. If we go to the documents library itself, here's yet another web part on this page that is only displaying the document library. Back on the home page, I have multiple web parts. I have a web part at the top, Get Started with Your Site. That's a promoted links list that has 6 different tiles on it. That's one type of web part. Then I have a web part for my newsfeed. I have a web part for documents. This is the home page for everybody who works at our hotel in San Francisco. If I work in IT and I have my way, this is going to be the default home page for everyone who launches a browser who works for us. This is a great space for collaboration, and I want to help my users use this page by making it omnipresent for them. So when they log in, I don't want them to go to Bing or to Google. I want them to come here, and I want to provide critical information for them. I don't want to waste even a little bit of this page on items that are boring or things that don't change over time unless they're the things you would reach for first. I want to make sure that the content on the home page is information that my users want and the things that they need to do their jobs. So I'm going to use apps and web parts here to deliver critical content. Almost every SharePoint page you go to is a page composed of web parts like this. Even if it only has one web part on it, like this documents page, it's a web part page. Now, there are other types of pages in SharePoint. You can have HTML pages. You can have wiki pages, and we'll be working with wiki pages later. HTML pages are usually used to show a chart or an image or a graph. Almost every SharePoint page you'll go to will have web parts on it, even if it only has one. Most of SharePoint is a combination of web part pages and wiki pages. Let's see how these pages work. Let's go back to our home page, and I want to edit this page. 2 different places I can indicate my desire to do that. I have an edit link up here. I also, on the page tab of the ribbon, have edit. Before I begin editing this page, if this is a production page, I actually want to check this page out. I don't want users to be trying to use a page that I'm in the process of changing. And remember, by checking it out, I would have the ability to make modifications to it and not have those modifications shift the view on my users. Once I've chosen Edit, whether I check it out or not, I have 2 tabs here. I have a Format Text tab that allows me to enter information. So this is all about formatting text. But the heart of what I'm going to do when I edit pages in SharePoint is not to work with text alone, but to insert. We can insert tables. We can insert media. We'll talk about that later. I can even insert links, but what we're going to focus on right now is the parts group right here, app parts and web parts. Let's choose web parts first because you'll notice at the top of the list of web parts are our apps. If I click app parts, that's exactly what I see. So again, all app parts are web parts and are included in the list. Every time I created an app, and in one case, when I purchased an app, the corresponding web parts were created. We added an announcements list to our site. There we go. We had a list that was formerly called San Francisco Contacts. I renamed it to Area Contacts. There's our business contacts from the Bernal Heights Landon Hotel area. Here's a calendar that we've added to our site. Departments, documents, links, microfeed, a resource library, site assets, and so on. It's helpful to know what the icons mean as you work particularly with the app parts. The bullhorn is announcements. If it looks like a little contact icon, it's contacts. Calendars, regular lists like departments and microfeed versus libraries like resource library, site assets, and documents. I added an app that came from the App Store for free, and that's this Weather Vibes, which shows the current weather in a selected location because I think that will be helpful for our folks. When I want to add an app part or a web part, what I do is I select where I'd like to add it. For example, right here, choose the part and click Add to add that part to the site. Let's look at the categories of parts so we have an idea of what is available to us. First, all of the app parts created by the apps that were default apps in our site and apps that I've added. We have blog web parts. We have business data web parts that allow us to analyze our business data, provide access to Excel, to Visio so that we can have very large workbooks. We have business indicators and business data lists. We have a set of community web parts so we can provide information about the community. We have content roll-up web parts, which are very powerful. Content roll-up web parts allow us to summarize information from other apps. For example, the timeline is a summarization of a task list. We have document set web parts, which we will learn about later in the course. We have the ability to create filters and apply them to a particular page. A date filter, a current user filter. So if, for example, we use the current user filter web part on a page, it will filter the other app parts in the same way that our dynamic view created using me filtered an app. All of the filter web parts are used in conjunction with lists so that we can quickly and easily allow our users to filter data. We have two types of forms that are supported, HTML forms and InfoPath forms, so that we can display forms that were created in InfoPath or HTML. Lots of media and content web part. The media and content parts get used a great deal in SharePoint. The first is a content editor web part that's often simply used to enter rich text to describe something. For example, to describe what a site is used for. Get started with your site is the promoted links list that let us very quickly go in and modify our logo, our theme, and so on. The image viewer displays one image. The media web part can display video. It can also play audio. The page viewer web part is pointed at another web page so that we can display another web page within this web page or within this site. There's a picture library slideshow web part, and we would point that to a picture library app so that we could display images. It's more dynamic content for my site. The next category, Outlook web app, allows me to display my information in SharePoint. You might wonder, where would I do this? Well, I might perhaps do this on my private page. I can show my mail, my tasks, my inbox, and so on. It's so easy with the app launcher to go to these applications within SharePoint. Often, these apps are not used as much as they were previously. The search web parts are used for searching, refining search results, a search box to search for information, navigating within search, and so on. And the social collaboration web parts allow us to do things like display the users who are part of a site, create a tag cloud so that we can view topics that are trending within a site. It is beyond the scope of this course to go through each and every one of these web parts. You'll find more information about them on the Microsoft site, in the Office 365 community site, and in the SharePoint Online help files. All of these web parts work in the same way. And if we don't have enough web parts here, then we can always add more apps, whether it's apps that we create to display our content or apps that we purchase or download for free at the App Store. Now that we know what's available, the parts that we can insert, we'll spend the rest of this chapter editing pages in Microsoft SharePoint. I'm done for now, so I'm going to stop editing my page, discard any changes I might have made accidentally, and we are back in our browse mode.